Greetings, folks. This is Paul talking about A Course in Miracles, and I'm going to talk about the separation, the split mind, dissociation. This is all the same thing, and how it relates to the Golden Rule and the atonement and forgiveness and shared interests. Now, in A Course in Miracles, it says that the separation from God was a state of dissociation, or as he likes to spell it, dissociation, and that dissociation and separation are synonymous. They're the same thing, and also that the split mind is a state of dissociation. So what that's telling you is the whole separation from God is nothing other than a disassociated state of mind, a split in the mind, a division that is separating mind. And he talks about how this makes it seem as though you have two selves. And then you also can look at the fact that space-time, the physical universe, is the split. It is the division in the mind. And you can also look at the fact that the body is a separation device. The body is a point at which there is a split, where the mind is putting this division in between portions of mind, the inside and the outside, that once was whole, to try to split it off and say, well, now there's this piece that's in here and there's this piece that's out there, and they are separated by the body. The body is a tiny fence that the Son of God draws around the mind to separate it off. So he's saying the separation is the split mind, and it is dissociation. Now, I'm trying to figure out how to put this. Dissociation means that the mind sort of disowns and doesn't want to be associated with some other portion of its own mind. It's and that also means splitting off a portion of your sense of identity and part of yourself, and believing that there is now a second self that is not you. And having this sort of a blocked awareness and a state of denial that clouds your perception and makes you perceive and believe that this other portion isn't part of you, and somehow it's cut off, it's separated off. And now there's the part of you that you think is all of you, and there's the part of you that you think is not part of you at all. And there's these two kind of halves of mind. And the inner half is the part that you seem to stay conscious of and sort of associated with. And you believe, this is myself, this is me, this is all of me. And then there's this other part that you disown, and you tend to push it away, and you tend to try to make a distance between you and it, so that it seems as though it's has nothing to do with yourself, and it's very disowned and rejected and attacked and distanced. You've created this space and this time in between this one portion and this other portion, and it has produced a perception that is based in denial and unawareness of the wholeness of yourself, in which you literally believe and perceive that it's actually not part of you anymore, that it's been sliced off and now it's relegated to something else. It seems alien. It seems like it has its own mind and its own will, an alien will, that it's someone else, that it isn't you. But all of this is taking place inside your mind. So your mind has this split in it, this big gap, this pit of hell, which is space and time, in which there is a whole world and a body, fences and divisions, and all the ways in which you believe you're cut off from and separated off from the rest of you. And the part of you that thinks that you're in your body is only part of you. And the part of your mind that you think is, this is all of my mind, this is my whole awareness, it isn't. It is only a portion, a small portion, or Jesus says in the Course, a tiny speck of your whole mind, which is universal and everywhere, unlimited. Now, the key to understanding this is realizing what mind is like when it's not split. Because your mind and yourself is infinite and everywhere, unlimited. It's so full and so whole that it's in your brothers, it's one with God, it shares everything with everyone, everyone's overlapping and sharing the same space, kind of, in heaven. And so your mind, in its natural, whole, healed, healthy state, is not merely just joined with your brothers and with their minds, but it's literally a part of you is them. As the Course says, one brother is all brothers, and one mind is all minds. Such is the truth. So you have a mind which is beyond the limits of your body, and it actually covers all of eternity and shares the entire kingdom and is one with all of God. And every single brother is within your mind as you are within theirs, as almost as if you are one self that is appearing as two selves. And it's not the same thing as two separate things being near to each other that are separate, or two separate things that are trying to share something. You actually merge with other people. And so in your whole state, your mind actually reaches out and joins with and communes with and overlaps and is one with everyone. Everywhere. You are infinite, you are unlimited. In separation, what's happening is this state of I am everywhere, omnipresence, which is also a quality in the Golden Rule, which I'll come to in a minute. The separation puts a divide in your mind and seems to make it as though part of you is sectioned off from another part of you. And in particular, in this direction, that I'm withdrawing from the unity that I have with my brothers, and they're seeming to be sectioned off and cut off from me. And so that's a reduction in communication, and it's a breakdown in relationship. And this divide and this gap that forms as you go down into what becomes an experience of hell, it's like the pit of hell. There is this great wedge that's driven into your mind to split it apart, like a piece of wood that you've taken your axe and you're trying to split the wood. This that your mind becomes divided, and it seems as though it takes on differences in each of the parts, and the differences seem to define how and why this piece is not the same as this piece. So in that heavenly state where you're one-minded, what is true of God is true of you. What is true of you is true of your brothers. Something applies to you, it applies to them. And because you are one with your brothers, you're in your brother's mind. you're not just isolated off into a body. You're literally fused with your brothers and share the same location as them, which isn't possible in space-time. If you were aware of this all the time, you had full awareness of your total oneness with everybody, you would know, it would be very obvious, that anything that you seem to give to your brother, you will also be giving directly to yourself, because you're in them. There is literally a part of you that is merged with and is in them. So if you would, any way that you treat them, any attitude you have towards them, any way that you love them or you attack them, because you are in them, you're one with them, you're literally directly doing it to yourself. Because literally a portion of your own mind is housed in them, is sharing everything with them. And it's a total unlimited sharing, so you're literally in your brother. So anything you seem to target at them, or you do to them, or you give to them, you literally are directly and immediately giving to yourself. If you're thinking of it as a transfer, it's going out of you, towards the you that's in your brother, the oneness. When you have total awareness of this, and there's no denial, and you're awake in heaven, it's completely obvious that therefore what is true of you is true of your brother. Anything that applies to you here applies to you over there. So there's a perfect equality, and all the laws of God are based on equality, that your brother is your perfect equal. And so this forms the golden rule. The golden rule is God's law. It's an experiential reality and dynamic that can never be broken, that applies everywhere at all times. It's not even optional, where the truth is here and the truth is there, and there's what I am is what my brother is, and there's no differences, there's no inequality between anyone or anything. Nobody's better than anyone else, nobody's above or below, nobody's bigger or smaller. Everyone has everything because God gave everything to everyone, and everybody is equal. So God treats all of his children equally with unconditional love. So every child of God is perfectly equal, and we're perfect siblings. We're permanently brothers in the kingdom. The kingdom of God contains all his children and their creations. We are the kingdom, we the sons of God. So that golden rule is a perfect law and a fact of reality, that giving and receiving are one. Whatever you give, you literally are immediately receiving from yourself. Because of the oneness, anything that I try to pass on to a brother, I'm literally sharing with him. I'm not losing it because I still have it, because anything I give, I retain. This is heaven's law, that you don't sacrifice, there's no lack, there's no loss. If I give something, I don't lose it. It increases because I'm sharing it. Both of us have it. This is why ideas are shared and they increase. That whatever I have to give, by giving it, I keep it. Just as God gave all of himself in your creation. And giving all of himself did not mean that he ran out of himself, sacrificed himself and no longer exists because he used himself up. But that in giving all of himself to you, he did it by sharing all of himself with you. So he has all of himself, and you are host to God as well. Same with your brothers. Everything you give them, you keep. to have all, give all to all. You keep what you give in reality. So giving and receiving are one, and this is the golden rule. And this is mind in its natural condition. This is how mind is supposed to function. You're supposed to know that you're one with your brothers, and therefore anything you express toward them, you literally are aiming it at yourself, and you're going to receive it. Cause and effect are one. So whatever you cause, whatever effects it results in, you will experience the effects. So as giving and receiving are one, cause and effect are one in reality. And this is how mind is naturally supposed to function. So whatever way in which you try to cause your brother, giving him love, giving him attack, accusing him of sin, healing him, or whatever it is that you give, you will receive by God's law. And this is always true, everywhere, everywhere, even in the illusion. Because God's law cannot be broken. It is a permanent, fixed state of reality, a fact of reality. So mind in its natural condition is obeying the law of God and is acknowledging that however I treat you, I am treating myself. And this is the golden. It's not a matter of maybe I'll treat you nicely and then maybe you'll reciprocate, or I'll treat you in a good way because that's how I would like you to treat me. That's also not the truth, because there's still a separation there between cause and effect. The real golden rule is that what is here is there, and what I give I do receive, and what I cause I am at the effect of. So, and there's no separation there, there's no maybe. So when our minds are in their healthy state, and you have full awareness, you know that you wouldn't be able to do anything harmful to someone else without experiencing the consequences. You know, if you were to feel angry towards a brother, you would have to sacrifice your own peace of mind and your own love and believe in attack and go down in consciousness and start experiencing suffering. This attempt to attack someone else is actually still an attempt to attack yourself. And whatever you try to do to them, you will experience. And that means that you don't escape the consequences. The problem is, and this is the origin of the whole ego thought system, is when you introduce the idea that cause and effect are separate, which is based on the belief that the Father, who is the cause, and the Son, who is his effect, are separate, that there's been a separation. This separation between the cause and the effect, or the you over here and you over there in your brother, this breakdown in communication, this rift that's forming, produces an inequality. And now, in some way, this is the foundation of the ego, there's a slight difference, there's a slight inequality. In some way, the truth about me is not quite the same as the truth about you. In some way, what applies to me doesn't apply to you, and what applies to you doesn't apply to me. And it suggests then that what I give to you, I don't receive. Therefore I lose it and I lack it. This is the origin of all sacrifice. And if I do something to you, I will escape from the effects. And somehow it seems possible and plausible suddenly that I could attack you and not be attacking myself. that somehow you could be not me, that we could not be one, and therefore if I do something to you, somehow there's a breakdown in the chain of cause and effect, and I'm not going to experience the consequences. And to the ego, this means you can get away with murder. And its entire thought system is therefore murderous. This idea that Jesus says, what is not love is murder. That any small amount of denial of the golden rule, denial of oneness, denial of equality, leads to a false belief and a mistaken belief that somehow you can do something to a brother and not be not be included in the experience of what you're doing. Somehow you're sort of neutral, or you're objective, or you're separate from him. So the effects that are experienced by him are separated off from you. And therefore you could make him suffer while you're not suffering. Or you could make him be guilty while you are remaining perfectly pure and innocent. And this is delusional, because obviously if you were to try to believe that your brother's guilty, you have to believe that guilt is real, which makes it apply to you as well. So you're actually then in denial, believing that it doesn't apply to you when it actually does. And the experience of the guilt will be there, but it will probably be unconscious or subconscious, because it's hidden behind the denial and the repression of yourself that has put a wedge in your mind. So when you have this separation, the separation from God, the separation from your brothers, it draws a wedge in your own mind between it breaks your relationship with your brothers and with God and with the part of yourself that is shared with them. So now in that breakdown of relationship and communication, you're going into darkness, you're going into confusion, you're going into the ego, you're going into space-time, you're going towards hell, you're going away from life towards death and sickness, and mental illness is increasing, because now what all that's happening is now you're becoming disassociated or dissociated from the part of you that's in them, and you're becoming dissociated from the fact that what is applying to you is still applying to them, and vice versa. And then you go into denial and you start believing that what applies to them doesn't apply to you. So having this difference, the world of differences, the world of separation, space and time and planet Earth, is all part of this idea of inequality and the breaking of the law of God, the golden rule, and the denial of equality and the golden rule. And it paints this picture of a world where it seems like everything is different. No two things are alike. Every person is confined to a different form, and the form takes on the form of the body, and all the bodies are different and not the same, as a way to separate off. Body is a separation device. It's a way to separate you off from your brother and say, I'm like this and you're like that, and we're not the same. And what applies to my body doesn't seem to apply to your body, and my body gets sick and yours doesn't, and your body has a problem and mine doesn't. It's a breakdown in cause and effect. It's all based on the ego breaking the laws of God. However, it's not possible to break the laws of God. So even while you're in a state where you believe that it doesn't apply to you, and you're able to attack and not be hurt, You're able to judge and not be condemned. You can find your brother guilty and be innocent. In all these ways that there's like an imbalance between who's doing what to whom, and this thing causes this thing, but this thing doesn't cause this thing. There's this break in cause and effect. It becomes one directional instead of bi-directional. In the golden rule, cause and effect is bi-directional. What I do to you, I do to me, because of the oneness. In space-time, it becomes the feedback of that is cut off, and it now seems as though I can cause and produce effects without being affected, or someone else can cause and produce effects in me without them being affected. And now you've set up the whole dynamic of the entire universe, of space and time, objects, physical forms, all that are obeying this denial of the law of God. And the world was made as an attack on God. So now even though you believe that the golden rule doesn't apply, and the world is filled with people who are going around basically condemning each other, believing that they are not being condemned, being angry at someone without believing that you are being attacked, trying to hurt other people and blame them, believing that doing so exonerates you, makes you innocent, the face of innocence. All these just ways of inequality. This is all denial, and it's all dissociation, because basically now your mind, which is supposed to be everywhere, has formed a split, and now it's making a gap. Your mind is making a gap within itself, but it's in denial that it's doing this, and it thinks, oh, this is natural, this is normal, this is how people are. But it's not natural, and it's not normal, and it's not healthy. You then lose sight of the fact that what you do, you receive, or what you give, you receive. You lose sight of the fact that you are the cause of what you experience, and you start to drift away from that awareness, and it starts to now seem like there's now a separate enemy or a separate cause, and you are separately affected, or vice versa, and what you do to this, you don't do to you. So now you buy into this illusion that you can attack without being hurt, and you can murder and get away with it without consequences, and you can find someone guilty and evaluate the guilt without you having to give up your innocence. Somehow you can be innocent while you're judging people and condemning them. And this is all like a disowning and a displacing and a losing sight of cause and effect in the mind. So then you believe, well, I'm not the one causing this. They're doing this to me against my will. I'm doing this to them against their will, because the giving and receiving are no longer one, and my brother's not myself. And what you find is, the more the attack increases in your mind, the more that you push people away, the more you reject, the more that you find them guilty, the more that you accuse them of sin, the deeper the split becomes in your own mind, because it's not really about you and other people. It's really one piece of your mind is becoming split off from another piece of your mind, and the piece that's in here starts believing that the part that's out there is not myself, that my mind is confined to my brain, as the Course says, that I believe that what is in here is all of my mind, when in fact what is out there is also part of my mind. But I've got a separation device splitting it off, making internal and external seem different. And now I think that the whatever is beyond the body isn't myself, isn't part of me, isn't one with me. It's separate and it's different. So what's happening in my mind, really, if we forget the world for a minute, just my mind, within my mind, if I'm going into dissociation, i.e. separation, i.e. the ego, then I'm splitting my mind in half, I'm disowning the other half, I'm perceiving it in such a way that I don't believe it's part of me, I think it's not myself, and I relegate it to the shadows. And the way by which I do that is by attacking. So if I attack, the more I attack, the more the bigger that gap becomes, the lower my consciousness gets, and the more it seems that separation is very strong and very real. That between me and the rest of me, there's this intensity of disconnect. That other part of myself is totally nothing to do with me at all. I don't want anything to do with it. I hate it. I want to destroy it, attack it, make it go away. And then the stronger this becomes, the more you see it as an enemy and as your nemesis and your arch enemy and you're the worst seeming person that could exist, that you want nothing to do with. And this is all happening inside your own mind. It's got nothing to do with anybody else. So the stronger that your anger becomes, the stronger that you get upset, the more that you emphasize difference, the more that you accuse of sin, the more that you feel guilty, the more that you condemn, regardless of whether you think it's somebody else or not, the stronger this judging, condemning, attacking becomes within you, the deeper the rift in your mind. And as that rift deepens, you become more and more convinced that what you're attacking isn't yourself. Who you're attacking isn't you. And the attack itself is an attempt to get rid of that other part of you. It's an attempt to try to frame it in such a way that it looks like it's nothing to do with you. You want nothing to do with it. You want to get rid of it, destroy it, murder it, kill it off. And the more you do that, the more you hate it, the more your sense of this has nothing to do with me increases. The separation in your mind increases to the point where you get into these states where you're really convinced they're the one that has a problem, this seeming other self. That's where the problem is. It's not over here. They're the one that's wrong. It's not me. They're totally guilty, vicious, evil, disastrous monsters that deserve to die, and I am perfectly pure and innocent and deserve to live. The person, I won't get to that yet. The ego suggests that you can be objective while you are having a split mind. It suggests that you're being neutral, that you're a whole self with a whole mind, with an objective perspective, able to sit neutrally and look upon this other self, this split off self, and evaluate it neutrally and unbiased, and come up with conclusions as to its nature that applies only to it and not to you because of how separate from you it is, and that therefore it can sit on the fence and be completely free from and escape from anything that it determines is true or false about this other self. And so in the world there is this tremendous belief that as you look out into the world and you see someone and you judge them and you evaluate what are they doing, are they sinning, are they guilty, you think that you're in a position where you're completely impartial and you're being totally objective and neutral, and you're not even condemning, you're just observing, and you're just pointing out what is evidently self-evident about these things, and that this person really is guilty and they actually are sinning. And that is a total myth, that you can do this with your mind. We form this sort of a side effect belief about how the mind functions, where we think that it's actually possible to sit there and find somebody other than me to be guilty while I'm feeling perfect innocence. It's hypocritical and it's impossible. So that's not happening when you do that. You might think that's what's happening. You might think you're being neutral. You might think you're not biased. You might think you're not even judging. But it's impossible, because of the golden rule that always applies everywhere, to escape the golden rule. So if you are finding someone guilty, you must be finding yourself guilty in some way. If you're seeing them as sinful, you must be believing in sin, and that is going to hurt you. If you're trying to attack someone and you're thinking you're attacking them and not yourself, you are in denial, because it literally is going to directly cause effects in you. Your mind is attacking itself when it attacks another person, or a not me, this part of yourself that's not me. But we get into denial, the stronger the separation becomes, and the more the differences are emphasized, and the form, the ways in which we appear to be not that, and not this, and not those people, the differences as they're emphasized, and you focus on the form, blinded by form, and you get lost in that, and you start really focusing on this is mine and that's yours, and this is me and that's you, and never the two shall meet. It just gets worse and worse. And you can believe very, very strongly that somebody else is the one who is the guilty party, who is horrendously guilty, some evil, sinful, child molesting, rapist, murderer person. You could say they are the one who is completely condemned to hell and they deserve punishment and death, and I'm pure and innocent. And the ego will make these kind of observations from the split mind, because that means I believe I'm so disconnected from this other part of myself that I fucking hate and want to kill, that I'm believing that it's got nothing to do with me. And then you're literally trying to emphasize the sinfulness of this other portion of your mind so that you can keep the distance between you and it increasing, so you can remain in denial and maintain your sense of innocence, which is fake, and kid yourself into believing that, well, they're the ones that are guilty and I'm not like them, therefore I'm not guilty. And they're the sinner and they deserve to die and I don't. I'm righteous. I'm pure and innocent. And therefore by emphasizing, focusing on, compounding, increasing, and attacking them for holding against this other self what they're doing and why it's wrong, that increases my denial and my split mind and my insanity, and portrays to myself an ever-strengthening picture, the face of innocence, that I am nothing like that. And this is the mind trying to partition off pieces of itself. It tries to dump all the sin and guilt and fear and evil into this portion, and put all the purity and the niceness and the friendliness and the kindness over here, and have them be attacking each other so that the rift between them increases, so that the two can remain separate. And you identify with this nice little friendly happy piece, believing that you're being perfect and pure, while at the same time full of judgment and hatred, very willing to react to and condemn this other part to make sure it stays away from you. This is dissociation. You've disowned a huge portion of your own mind. You want to get rid of it, destroy it, and put as much distance between yourself and it as possible, so that you can create the illusion and the delusion that you are pure, innocent, holy, and spiritual. To pretend to yourself that you're not guilty as a coping mechanism and a defense and a way of trying to fix the problem of the fact that your mind is riddled with guilt. You believe you're a sinner, you're attacking yourself, and you're in denial of this, and you want to just pretend that you're not doing it. But it's very, very, very unhealthy to do this projecting. So what happens is, within your mind, you're doing this splitting. Let's say your mind is the size of the universe, and you split it off here, and this part in here is one piece, and the part out there is the other piece that's unconscious, that I've disassociated from. I don't think it's me at all. This is happening in my mind. But then you've got the fact that there are other people. And the other people, let's say we position them outside your mind, and they're over here and they're over there. As your dissociation increases and you believe that you have a split in your mind, a belief in separation, which has driven a wedge and has put you in hell, and now you're split-minded, the attitude that you have as the pure little happy friendly piece towards the sinful, guilty, murderous, evil enemy piece, which is all in one mind, the attitude that you have towards that, and the fact that you are disassociated and you believe it's not myself, it's not in me, it almost makes it seem like you've cut off your mind from itself, and now you've pulled a piece of your mind away, and it's confined away from the rest. That belief is experienced as a belief that that's not me, that's not part of me, that's not in me, it's outside of me, it's external to my mind, which is really this contained piece of mind. It's outside the piece, in the other piece. But because of that dynamic and that way of experiencing that, there's a chunk of evil that's separated off, and it's not myself, but it really is. And that because this places the experience or the relationship to that other piece as though it's outside of you and separate from you, that happens to map onto the world, the physical world, very easily, and especially onto other people's bodies. So now you've got a case where within your own mind there's a split, and there's a self-attack, and there's a part of mind that thinks it's innocent and a part of mind that is filled with guilt. And the experience between them, the relationship, that is one of disownership and dissociation and wanting to put distance between us. And the way that makes it seem like this one chunk is outside of and external to this other chunk, that happens to seem to map to the innocent part of the mind is inside my body. The body is the split and the division, the separation device that separates me off and defines me as different from others and not them. And everything outside the surface of the body seems to correlate to that other chunk of split off mind that is in my mind. And so I've got this two-piece mind in here, and I'm putting one piece inside and the other piece outside my body. And the way that I relate to that other piece of my own mind is that it's not me. And so if another body walks along and the two overlay, I project that onto another body, it's very, very easy to not be able to tell them apart. They're so similar in how you relate to them that that's outside of me and this is not myself, and this body looks like it's not my body, and it perfectly matches the relationship that you have in your split mind between the two pieces of your mind, the inside and the outside, which are really all inside. Ideas leave not the source. It maps onto the inner part is in here and the outer part is out there. And so somebody comes along with their body, it becomes very, very easy to confuse the two and to bind them together, having projected onto them and filtering reality through that condemnation, through the guilt, through the sin, through the evil that you believe in and see in them because of your putting it outside you. And now it seems as though separate people, separate bodies, other people, your brothers who are in bodies, are combined with the part of your mind that you believe is not yourself. Let's just put that in another way. So you've got these two pieces of your own mind. The inside piece stays in the body, the outside piece seems like it's outside your body, and the outside piece merges with the bodies of other people, and you attach it to them, and you associate it with them because of how you are disassociating it from yourself, saying that's not part of me, it's not in me, therefore it must be in you guys. It's part of you. It's out there. And cause and effect are separate. So now you think the cause that's coming from this separate part of my own mind is actually in my brother. And the sin that was in my mind that I've sectioned off and relegated and tried to get rid of by disowning it is now associated with external things. And now I find my brother to be the sinner. And I see through the guilt and see the guilt in my brother that's in my mind. And I think it's not mine because of this dissociation. The separation in the mind causes you to believe that what is yours isn't yours. This is very prevalent. It is widespread in the world. You don't have to look far to find, maybe I'm scapegoating now. You don't have to look far to find someone who in some way believes that there is a difference between them and others, and therefore what's in them is different from what's outside them. What they're doing is different from what other people are doing. Their innocence is different from other people's innocence, and therefore they're having this constant relationship with what they think is other people, which really is a portion of their own self, attacking it, judging it, condemning it, labeling it, judging it, being mean to it, hurting it, getting in fights with it, destroying it, being at war with it. And all all the ways in which the mind is secretly trying to increase the separation, to deepen the sense of dissociation between the part of you and the other part of you, through this cutting off of the piece of your mind and this part that's guilty, this you that is a sinner, that you're trying to get rid of and get it out of your mind and get rid of it out of your awareness. The blocks to awareness keep it away from you. And you instead see it as outside you, external, separated off. And now you map it onto the things that you perceive in the world and other people's bodies and their activities. It becomes really easy to not be able to tell them apart. So now when it seems like this person over here is being aggressive and they're acting up and they're attacking and threatening, your experience of that with a split mind is that the split off part of your own mind is being aggressive and is attacking and threatening you. But you don't recognize it as part of yourself, so you think it's this other person doing this, and you interpret their actions through the filter of your own sin. You but accuse your brother of your own sin. And this is all happening in the dissociated, split-minded state. So you then think, oh, this person is wrong and evil and bad, and I'm not. and you point a finger and you judge them for it and you hold it against them, because if you can make them wrong and pile on the guilt and increase and emphasize their sinfulness, it increases the rift in your mind and separates you more and drives you more insane and makes you more dead. But you don't believe that that's what you're doing. You don't even think that you're hurting yourself at all. You don't think this is having any effect on you. You think that they are the only one who is receiving this condemnation. All of your attack is justified because of their inherent guilt and sinfulness, and it's all them, and they're the one receiving the effects. And because you're separated, because you're split off, you're protected by the separation. And the separation is a wall, and it's a defense, and it's keeping you safe from the evil fuckers out there that you think are the ones who are evil and guilty. And so long as you stay in this, and the more you emphasize it, it particularly happens when you're angry at someone. If you notice, if somebody gets into a fight with somebody, and then they come along and they start telling you about what happened. And it starts off at first with a little bit of venting. But it quickly turns into a recollection of all the things they did wrong, the litany of sins, all the ways they were bad and evil, the things they did to them, the way they were victimized. And then the language, you'll notice the language starts to turn. And they start becoming more angry as they retell the story of how this person did this to them. And as they get more angry, the separation increases, and they become more dissociated. And they're dumping their guilt into this other part of mind that is, they think is this other person, to get rid of their own guilt. And it's increasing the separation, and it's increasing their insanity. And because they're becoming more and more cut off from this other part of their own mind, the part of you that's in your brother, having a mind burp, they think that you notice the language changes, and they start talking about this person in the first perspective, like as if they're standing right in front of them, and they start using the word you and saying, well, you did this and you that and you said this and her, as if they're freaking standing in front of the person and having the experience right now. And yet the person's not even in the room. But as this person's becoming angry and starting to attack, they're addressing this attack at something, at someone that they believe is not themselves, and it starts turning into this separation thing, and they start saying you, and they start pointing a finger. But it's like the mind is having a fucking fight with itself, and they're attacking this other part of their own self and calling it you as if it's not themselves, and they're aiming all this hatred and attack at it, thinking that it's about someone else. It's self-destructive. The more that you go into anger and hate, the more that you project guilt, the more that you judge and attack, the more that you find people to be evil and wrong. You cannot do this without hurting yourself. Not even a tiny bit, not even the slightest hint of annoyance, malice, slight upset, tiny grievance, little bit annoyed with someone has the same effect on your mind. You can't do it objectively, you can't retain your peace, you can't stay healthy when you do this stuff, because it causes dissociation. It forces your mind to split in half, and you start believing that some of you is not yourself. You lose your wholeness. You lose sight of who you are. Your identity changes. You lose sight of recognizing who you are. You don't know yourself anymore. You're freaking going insane when you do this. You can't get away with it because the golden rule is always applying. But the ego believes it's getting away with it. And so if you believe this and you fall for this and you're in this psychological state of separation, and you're really believing some portion of myself isn't me, and you sectioned off this piece of you and you're saying, this piece of me isn't me, I'm not that. Well, now you've pretty much said, I am not myself. I'm different to myself. I'm not like me. You lose yourself in that, and that is self-destruction. It causes all sickness and death. Without exception. Self-attack, split-mindedness, the making of the world, the increasing of hell and division and separation and conflict, war with yourself, all of this is you doing it to yourself. It is self-destruction through division. And this is what being separate is about. This is the entire separation from God, is a separation from yourself, a separation from the rest of your mind, a separation from your brothers, a separation from God, from reality. It's a loss of identity. It's mental illness. And you can't do any of this without losing yourself. So you can't hold a grudge and have a grievance and be angry with someone, believing that you're angry with them because of what they're doing and not because of what you're doing, without experiencing consequences. You might call it instant karma. You do it to yourself, though. It is immediate, it has no delay, and it's self-inflicted. So the very instant that I defy the golden rule and I start believing in the tiny mad idea that something is not quite the same between us, something isn't quite the same truth, what's true of me isn't quite true of you, we're a little bit different, I'm going into the separation. I'm creating ego. You could say ego is difference. And when there's no difference, there is no ego. You can't have ego without those opposites, the duality. So even a tiny little bit of aggression, a little bit of attack, will directly inflict upon myself consequences. Being aware of that is what's going to set you free from all attempts to attack other people, because it becomes a vested interest. This is what the Course means by a shared interest. A shared interest is not two separate people having something in common. It's not that, oh, we like each other because we're similar. It's not that we're having a nice relationship because we happen not to clash as much, because we're not as different. These are still illusions of equality. A real shared interest is when you are recognizing that all parts of your mind are one mind, and all parts of you are part of your brother. And because there is an absolute awareness, a total awareness, that all of you is in all of your brothers, that you know anything I do to them, I'm going to do it to myself right now. And there's not even going to be a hint of a delay or a waiting into other lifetimes for some karmic feedback or a delayed punishment. It's going to be now, immediate. The slightest bit of attack in my mind towards the part of me that's in my brother is instantly going to degrade my mental health and attack me. Even if I do it under the belief that I'm escaping from effects because I'm separating cause and effect with separation, I think I'm not going to be affected by this, I can get away with it. That's the entire slippery slope of the ego thought system. If you have the awareness that this is true and that you are under the golden rule of God, you're the law of God, and you cannot escape it, and all you've been doing is denying that it's applying to you, if you become aware that anything you do hurts yourself, any attack that you attempt to make towards another person splits your mind, any anger that you have towards not myself is anger that splits off part of you and attacks it. If you become aware, and we have to become fully aware of this, this is atonement. This is what forgiveness is about. This is the secret of salvation. The recognition that I thought that this involved my brothers. I thought this involved other people. I thought this was other causes other than myself. I thought it was coming from someone, not me. I thought it was happening to me against my will. I thought I was being unfairly treated and victimized by a separate victimizer that was not me being a perpetrator. And I had a separation, a nice comfy separation between cause and effect, so that I could portray myself as the innocent victim and happily suffer, receive punishment, become sick and dead, in order to get away with being able to accuse someone else of doing what I believe I've done, to get rid of my sin. You're happy to die. And if it will enable you to get away with murder, you're happy to die and suffer and be sick if it means you can dissociate and separate off the sin of attacking God and disown it and attach it and associate it with someone else. And now you can say, behold me, brother, at your hand I die, because I've now associated with you all of causality and all sin and all attack and all murderous intent, and it's not mine. and it's not in me, so I get to say, you're the fucker who caused me to die. And by willingly desiring that this happen, wanting it to occur, enticing it to occur, arranging situations where it can occur, and passively laying down and letting it happen with no attempt or desire to stop it through your own causation, we actually become willing to suffer and die if it means that we can be absolved of the guilt and we can disown the sin and the guilt that we have accused ourselves of, that we don't want to own and we've tried to dissociate from. This is what people do when they attack and when they are sick and when they're dead. A dead body is an attempt to prove your brother's guilt. A sick body is an accuser. Sick bodies remain accusers. The damaged body is proof that the mind has not been healed. Because if my body's damaged now, I am literally using damage and attack and effects to testify that I'm an effect of a separate cause that's in my brother, and he's the one that did it to me. He put this in me, the fucker, and I get to point a finger of blame through my victimhood and my suffering and say, you did this to me, it's your fault, I'm not going to take responsibility for it, and therefore I am absolved and exonerated of sin. And people are killing themselves, destroying themselves. The entire world is filled with people that are suicidal, destroying themselves, trying to kill themselves and die and suffer in an attempt to get rid of their sin, to get rid of their guilt, to dissociate from it, put it on something else, put it somewhere else other than in their mind, in their awareness, because they can't stand it. If you were aware of the guilt in the mind, you would not be able to tolerate it. That's why you try to get rid of it. So this whole world is literally filled with people who are coming here to die, who are committing suicide through self-destructiveness, self-attack, self-abuse, self-denial, self-repression, disowning of themselves, irresponsibility, positioning themselves as weak and frail and attackable and vulnerable, immortal beings trying to make out that they're mortal and can be hurt and can be damaged and can be changed. Nothing real can be threatened, so they're trying to make out that they're not real. And so we've got planet Earth, a world full of suicide, a world of self-destruction, a world where just about everyone on the planet is trying to kill themselves. This is something you got to look at. This is honest recognition of what's going on. Okay, even the slightest amount of a desire to attack, to find guilty, to believe in sin, to separate the oneness that is natural and healthy, is a rejection of life, a rejection of wholeness, a sanity, a rejection of health and vitality, a rejection of eternal life, and a rejection of yourself. It is an attempt to destroy yourself by separating yourself from yourself and breaking yourself down into pieces that are disjointed, dysfunctional, against each other, having a fucking internal war, self-inner conflict, self-destructiveness, self-condemnation, accusing yourself of being sinful and guilty of stuff that you've never done, because there is no sin. The world's full of this. It's a suicide planet. everyone in the world that isn't in the state of perfect resurrection, like Jesus, is destroying themselves to various degrees and speeds. Through the splitting of the mind, this ego, this separating, this disowning, this unwillingness to be integrated and whole. And so forgiveness comes in to try to repair this separation, to undo it. To atone is to undo. To heal the split in the mind and remove the split requires, at least at the beginning, and usually at the beginning, the willingness to recognize that you might be mistaken about believing that this suffering, this sickness, this death, this attack, this upset, these reactions have nothing to do with you. That it's someone else's fault, a separate cause, a separate sinner, a separate person is doing it to you. It's because of the food and the body and the world and the situations and the things that happen to me and blah, blah, blah. You have to be at least have a little willingness to entertain the possibility you might be mistaken about that. Because you can get into states where you're really strongly, when you're really angry, you can be really strongly convinced that it's entirely them and not me. It's totally nothing to do with me. Over there is where all the sin is, and it's not over here whatsoever. And so you can be really convinced of that when you're not forgiving, and that's being unforgiving. It's an unforgiving attitude. It is destructive, it's attacking, it's murderous towards you. But you believe it's not towards you, and that this separating, attacking the not myself is happening outside the mind, and it's not in you, and you're not the one getting attacked. And you're getting away with it, and thinking that you are destroying another person, when in fact the thing that you're targeting is actually part of your own self, your own mind, and the part of you that's in your brother. So you've then got to get to where, okay, I'm willing to look at the fact that that person is not the cause of me. They're not the one who's sinning. They're not making me do this. My food isn't making me sick. My environment isn't attacking me. I'm not having this experience because of something outside my mind. But to do that, you've got to recognize that this attacker, this enemy that you've framed in your perception, that you think is not inside you, you think it's external to you, it's separated off, it's dissociated, not myself. Somehow you've got to break down that wall of that dissociation, that it's not me that's doing it, it's someone else is doing it, it's their fault. So any beliefs that you have about, oh, they're the one, this is the reason why I believe they're the one that did this to me, has to be wrong. You've got to realize there's this big chunk of the sinner that you think is outside you, and it's not that person. It's actually part of yourself, part of your mind, and you're the one who's condemned it to be what it is. You're the one who judges it, attacks it, tries to get rid of it, wants to destroy it, wants nothing to do with it, and doesn't want to be close to it. To keep you separate, that's doing all the busy work. So to forgive, you've got to reclaim this portion of yourself and your mind that you think is not part of yourself or your mind. You've got to recognize that it isn't actually outside of your mind. It seems to be outside of this part of your mind that you've sectioned off and that you think is different. And the ways in which you think these two parts of mind are different must be an illusion, the differences are not true if both of these are in one mind. So you've got to recognize that attacker is me. The one that's doing it to me is a part of my mind. The will that's willing against my will, my separated off piece of will, this other will, this alien will that's doing it against my will, having a clash, is part of my own will. This external power that I think has power over me, that I've empowered, that I've given my power to and disowned and dissociated from my own power and perceive it outside myself and think that it's attached to other people and situations, and I think they have power over me. That power is my own power. It's a chunk of my own power that I don't want to have. And so I've tried to get rid of it, and I want to be overpowered by this power. I want other people to have power over me so that I can get away with this and keep disowning my power. I don't want to claim it. So you've got to become willing to reclaim, take your power back. And you're not taking it away from someone who's taking it away from you. You've tried to give it to them. You try to shove it down their throats. They don't even want your power. They don't have your power. They have no power over you because you are only the effect of God. You're not the effect of your brother. But you've given ego, separation, power by not wanting to be the one who has the power. So then you think, I'm being overpowered and I don't have power and I'm weak and I'm powerless. I don't have the power to go up against this powerful enemy who is myself, separated off, a chunk of myself that I've put all the power into. I've stored all my power in this chunk of my mind through dissociation. And now I've got to take it back and reintegrate it and realize this is mine. This piece of mind is a part of me. This piece of my mind isn't an enemy. It's not the cause of me. It's not attacking me. It's not against my will. It is my will. Having a divided will means that you've split your will through splitting your mind. And now you're trying to get one piece of your will to will stuff that the other piece of your will isn't willing. And now they will different things. And they collide and they clash and they seem to be against each other. So now you think that stuff's happening against my will. It's you happening to you with your will against the other part of your own will because your will is divided. Because you've got separation going on in your mind. So you have to reintegrate and reclaim, recognize that this big enemy, this power, this alien will, this sinner, this cause that I think is not me, is inside my mind. It is me, and it therefore is me doing it to myself. The self that I think is this nice, tidy, separated off piece is being victimized by this other part of myself that I thought was not myself. And so you didn't recognize that you were the one who was responsible, who was in fact the cause of all your own suffering. You were the one who were doing it to yourself. You were the one making yourself sick. You were the one destroying yourself. You were the one that was trying to get rid of yourself. You were the one who, with the split mind, who didn't realize you were hurting yourself. You didn't realize the golden rule was still applying to you. You thought you were getting away with hurting yourself without being hurt. So you not only have to let other people off the hook by realizing they are not even the part of the mind that is doing this to you, you have to then realize that the thing that you think is doing stuff to you isn't outside your mind. It's not beyond the scope of your mind, which is why you're aware of it, because you can only be aware of what's inside of your mind. You can't be aware of there is no outside, because you're infinite. So now you've got within your mind, you bring together the two opposites, the persona and the shadow, and you have to get them talking again. You have to heal the rift, remove the differences, iron out the inequalities, overlook the forms, the way that these two parts seem to be not the same thing. So it's like you have within your mind a victim and a victimizer. And the victimizer seems to be different from the victim because they seem to be doing most of the causing and not much of the effects. And the victim seems to be having most of the effects and not much of the cause. This has to be seen through in order to make them equal. So now you've got to recognize the victimizer is being victimized by the victim, and the victim is also a victimizer. And they are the same. And then by overlooking the ways that they appear to be different, not buying into their bullshit, both of these characters in the mind are fake. Their differences are based on illusions. Neither of them can be true. Forgiving that is overlooking their differences. It's seeing past the ways in which there is a separation, the ways in which this isn't that, or I am not this other self. I'm not one with this other part of my mind. That has to be undone, whatever way possible, to get to the whole-mindedness, to get back to the one mind, back to, as Jesus says, being one with yourself, where your mind is is in agreement with itself. It doesn't have a split because it doesn't believe in separation. It isn't in denial. It's not dissociating from itself. It knows all of itself and therefore who you are by recognizing all and accepting all of yourself. It has reintegrated and reclaimed all the parts that it kept separating off and trying to pin on other people. And now it has become unified. And that's true perception. That's salvation. It's forgiveness. That's the atonement state. So the atonement is the cancellation and the erasing of disassociation or dissociation in your mind. It is the healing and the undoing of your mistakenness in believing in any kind of separateness. Any kind of separation, any kind of difference splits your mind. If you believe in it in any way, in your relationship with the part of you that's in your brother and is your brother, your relationship to all people that you have to love unless you want to be dead, doesn't quite sound right, but basically yes. So the atonement is the erasing of the ego. It's the erasing of this separation in your mind. The separation from God is in your mind. It is a separation between you and God. It's between you and your brothers, your sonship. It's between you and yourself. And it happens purely through dissociation, by emphasizing difference, trying to make out in some way or another this portion of you is not the same as this other portion. This inequality, this breakdown of communication, this breaking of God's golden rule, this denial of your wholeness, this belief in being different, this belief in form, this belief that you're a different shape, a different color, made of different materials, a different background, different identity, not like others, unique and special, which is all the ego. The entire ego, the whole thought system is basically this split in the mind, the split-mindedness, the tiny mad idea that it might be possible for something to be different for someone else than it is for you. As of course talks about how you had perfect peace in heaven with your brothers, you were in your right mind until you sought special favor. So you were there with your brothers, you were all perfectly equal, everybody shared everything, everything was equally true of everyone. There were no differences, there was no conditionality, there was no specialness or favoritism. And then somebody came along and thought, I wonder what it'd be like if I was special, if God would treat me different from how he treats other people, if I could have some conditional love, if I could be unlike my brothers, if I could have come from a different father, if I could have been inherit something that isn't in God, something of my own, something that doesn't exist, that I can make up and I can add on to myself, produced a denial of the fact that you are one with your brother, and started this process of dividing you, separating you off from the rest of you. And this is what the world has become. The whole world is that separation in the mind. Heaven and earth are both in your mind. You maintain the world in your mind with your thoughts. The world that you see in false perception, physical matter, bodies, planets, whatever, is images in a mind driven mad by guilt, in a mind that has gone into a belief in separation, into a belief in inequality and difference. And now you've got this massive plethora of things that all seem to be kind of confined and separated off. Different bodies, different people in different bodies, you being trapped in a body, you thinking that who you are in your body is all of yourself. And those motherfuckers out there are separate from you, and they're not you. That's mental illness. It is insanity. But all the world, look at how much the people in the world, we're all believing, I am my body. So if you identify with a form, a difference, a separateness, a thing, an object, a physical object, a body, a lump of flesh, a house, a car, whatever, if you identify identity with different forms of separateness, that is body identification. And you're saying, I am separated from the others by this mechanism. The body is a device for separation. And because I'm attaching myself to and associating myself with my body, or anyone's body, or I think that they're associated with their body, I am literally saying, I am disassociated from the others. If I am this body, I cannot be your body. So now I'm believing this is me and that's not me. And so the me that's in here is not my brother. And the me that's in here is not joined with them, isn't sharing with them, because I'm confined and I'm trapped inside a body. I'm cut off from you. So whatever I think is true of me as a form, if I think any of this is myself, I am delusional. If I think any of this body, any of its properties, its shapes, colors, sizes, whatever, is myself, I have literally denied the part of me that is also in everyone else. and I have allowed illusions, appearances, objects and forms, differences, splits, dissociation to come between me and the rest of me. The rest of me is my brothers. I am in them. I am one with them. Literally, my mind spans my body and all the other bodies. Your mind is in all minds. One mind is all minds. You are everywhere. You are in everyone. Any breakdown in that fact induces illness, attacks you, attacks your body, attacks your brother's body, is destructive, and is an attempt to die. It is suicide. Now, wherever you're at in your spiritual awakening, let's say that down here is being very far from God, you're in false perception, you're in hell, you're suffering, you're sick and dying, you're very identified with your separateness, and you don't have much sense of being one with anyone, and so you really have this kind of sociopathic total lack of empathy and joining. You're very much in the dark, you're insane. And up here, you're very close to heaven. Everyone is sharing everything. It's all merged. It's one. You are in your brother. You're sharing minds. You are communing. There's total joining. There's no identification with objects and forms and bodies. Your whole focus is on communication and openness and sharing. And there's no limitation. You're miraculous. You're sane. Okay, there's a whole spectrum between these two extremes. You've got false perception and true perception. You're somewhere in here, in the middle. Wherever you're at, any amount of attacking, denying the golden rule, separating, emphasizing difference, pushing people away, withdrawal, fear. Separation is fear. It's an attempt to get away from stuff, and fear is death. All forms of sickness, even unto death, are physical expressions of the fear of awakening. So you're in here somewhere, and if you have an attitude where you're a little bit unloving, you worry and you doubt and you fear, or you condemn people, you judge people, you keep attacking them, you blame, you find them to be guilty sinners, you hate people, you try to destroy and murder, you have a slight annoyance about someone, okay? It tilts you down in your trajectory a little bit. It aims you down away from the light. Okay, so if you anything short of embracing holy relationship will change your goal. You're sort of saying, I don't have the goal of life, and the only form of life that is life is eternal life. So if your goal isn't to go towards the oneness, the sharing, the joining, the eternal life, health, wholeness, happiness, integration, the undoing of the ego and separation, atonement, if you're not aiming toward that, you are aiming towards death and hell and destruction, suicide, sickness and suffering, unhappiness, separation from God. So if you're in the middle here in this spectrum of perception and belief, and you've got all these sort of any kind of attitude that is in the category of even slightly unloving, As Jesus says, what is not love is murder. What is not recognizing the golden rule and the perfection of equal relationship is to some degree murderous, because it's an attempt to be able to do something to someone else that you get away with and not experience the effects of. Getting away with murder. If you're in anything that's slightly unloving, is going to slightly tip your aim and your goal and steer you towards death and destruction, towards suicide, towards self-attack, punishment, and death. If your focus is on making your relationship holy, or going towards God, becoming more loving, being more forgiving, atoning, acknowledging innocence, perfection, reclaiming your immortality and eternal life as the only truth about you, you're still as God created you because you are immortal. If you aim that way, it's going to steer you upwards. Those kind of attitudes, forgiving, loving, supporting, strengthening, giving, sharing, joining, recognition of innocence, that willingness is not neutral. So it's going to be a slight upwards trajectory, and it's going to take you towards heaven. So this is the choice that you're making all the time. Am I being attacking? Am I healing? Am I aiming towards life, or am I aiming towards death? Am I being constructive, or am I being destructive? As Jesus talks about in the Course, you're supposed to reinstate the purely constructive powers of your mind. And constructive power is very strong, and it's miraculous, and it's the loving direction. It's the towards heaven, towards immortality direction. It's the forgiving, the atoning, the innocence, the honesty, the willingness to it's the golden rule, that you're willing to acknowledge that you live by the golden rule, and that you recognize the equality of your brothers with yourself. Because equality does mean you are equal to them. It means you are them. When your mind is being constructive, it is being creative. Creation is purely constructive use of the mind. It constructs, it builds, it strengthens, it creates, it adds life, it resurrects. When you're being destructive, you are trying to diminish, emphasize lack, increase separation, attack, hurt, harm, damage, produce sickness, illness, and disease, eventually cause death to happen to yourself or to another. Those are all a destructive use of your mind. So you're trying to reinstate that your mind is only being used for constructive purposes, which means your decision that you're not going to keep being destructive towards yourself, and therefore towards others, by looking at, well, what am I doing? What's my attitude? If I'm fearing, I'm almost definitely going to be picturing something going wrong, something getting worse, something being destroyed. If I'm being unforgiving, if I'm being angry at someone, I definitely am splitting my mind in half and increasing my own suffering and emphasizing separation and causing damage to myself and others, being murderous. So you got to sort of ask yourself, what do I want? What's my choice? You're choosing. You're choosing again. Your choice is the only freedom you have left. Are you going to choose immortality and perfect health, mental health, wholeness, the perfect restoration and health of the body as a symbol of eternal life, teacher of God, sane, miracle worker? Or are you going to have the expressions of unlove that are inclusion, doubt and fear and anger and attack and guilt and making wrong, hurting, damaging, condemning, judging, blaming, attacking, getting violent, trying to destroy stuff, murder and death, and all forms of sickness are all chosen by having a goal of death, trying to die, suicidal, a death wish. Because if you believe that sin is real, if you believe that you've sinned or anyone has sinned or sin's even possible, even slightly, you believe you have sinned, it is real, it is irreversible, and you therefore deserve to be punished and dead. And you will make sure that fucking happens to you because you believe it and you think you deserve that. So you'll bring it about. No one dies without their own consent. You cannot die unless you choose to do so. It is all suicide. Either you are destroying yourself or you are resurrecting yourself. Either you are being creative or destructive. Either you are extending God or you are extending death. The ego. That's your choices. Those are your two options, your two thought systems. Do I want to think like God? Or do I want to think like the ego? Do I want to think with love or do I want to think with death? Do I want to have a murderous, terrorizing, destructive attitude towards people, believing that it's towards people and not towards me, and that's not having any effect on me, all the while positioning yourself as a weak, victimized, suffering, sickened person? Or do I want to reclaim and own up to my innocence and my immortality, eternal life, which God has already guaranteed me forever? And I just have to accept it and not deny it. So, I think we're kind of drawing to a close here. This is getting pretty long. If you've made it this far, thank you for your patience. So just a very quick recap. Separation is dissociation. Dissociation is ego. The world is separation. The world is dissociation. The world is ego. The body is one of the ways that you separate yourself off. Objects, forms are the way that you separate things off. It is a denial of the golden rule, even though the golden rule still applies. And if you believe you can do something and get away with not the consequences, you are in denial. You will experience suffering. And as you own up to what you are doing to yourself, secret of salvation, that your mind has been the one who has been attacking itself, and you reintegrate and get yourself whole, you will be aware that you'll be very intimately aware that you cannot have any kind of harmful attitude towards yourself or others. And your attitude to yourself is the same as your attitude towards others, giving and receiving are one. You can't do anything harmful without being hurt. And that gives you a shared interest. It gives you, recognizes that what's good for you is good for others, because your unwillingness to attack yourself makes you loving toward them. You know that if you were to attack them, you will also attack yourself. So it's in your own best interest and the best interest of them that you only be loving. You only give and receive love. Teach only love, for that is what you are. If you don't teach only love, you are teaching destruction. And it's you that will experience the destruction. So that shared interest is showing you that you can't do anything. You can't even move an inch without consequences. Without whatever you do, whatever you choose, it will affect you. Something in our course about teachers of God look on dreams a while. It's a conscious decision because they've learned that all decisions are made with full awareness of the consequences. So if you have full awareness that everything you do causes you, everything you do produces effects that you experience, you would know it is absolutely against the best interest of you and others to have even a slight attack, aggression, anger, blame, judgment, condemnation, because you are going to be included in the consequences. And so you would only choose to act and behave and express in ways in which are supportive of yourself and others, healing of yourself and others, miraculous, because it's the only thing you can do, and the only thing that makes sense, unless you want to suffer. And the ego is going to tell you, yeah, you can do this stuff and get away with it, and you can hurt this person and not be hurt. It's a lie. Don't believe it. It's not true. I am you. You are me. We are one. You are my brother. I am your brother. What is in you is in me. Whatever I express toward you, I am literally, directly expressing toward the part of me that is shared with you. And therefore, if I attack you, I will hurt myself. So the only way I can have a relationship with you that doesn't hurt me is to unconditionally and fully love you. This is just the way it is. There's no options, there's no loopholes. As Jesus says in the Course, everybody should love everybody. I think I've been chatting for a long time, so I'm going to stop chatting now and get some lunch. Talk to you again soon. Hope this has been useful, and God bless. Love to you, and bye for now.